Let's shift gears into talking about getting started by your company, the early days. So let's start with before this company started. What did you hate the most about working at big tech?
Yeah, so I didn't work at big tech. One of my co-founders has, but I avoided it. Um, yeah, I was previously a software engineer at apartments.com for a little bit, and then immediately started Quantbase very shortly after that. And that was the SEC registered robo advisor before Hadrius.
Got
Yeah.
it. Startup founder versus startup early employee. Is an early employee just someone doing the same amount of work but without the same level of equity?
So it's definitely a trade-off. Less equity for sure. Uh, Maybe a higher salary than the founder. I've seen that happen pretty often. But it's also less responsibility, of course. I don't think there's not the same obligation to be on call all the time, or, you know, you're not putting as much on the line. And so at the same time, though, it's definitely riskier in other ways. You have less control over the direction of the company. So you definitely have to pick a good founding team that you're going to be devoting a lot of your time and the opportunity cost, where you could go somewhere else or a different company too. You're sort of like an investor in that regard as an early startup employee.
Hmm. Why did you decide to start your own company?
Yeah, I was studying physics and I was going to go into academia. Since high school, I'd been working at the particle physics lab in Virginia, and it was a few years of that I came in one night and saw one of the postdocs there was working late, and the idea of spending decades just grinding, working on things I didn't find interesting in order to get to the place I wanted to be, which was being a professor and directing my own research,
Hmm.
was just not appealing at all. It's just so much red tape. And at the same time, even, the professor I work very closely with, it was the same thing for him. It was still so much red tape. Even in his 60s, he was still not at the point where he just had full reign over what he could really focus on. So it was a big part of it was, I mean, I always wanted to have an impact and to focus on creative problem solving and understand the world on a deeper level. And I thought physics was the way to do that. But shortly after that, I find startups is just so much better for doing that. You can build a massive company, and in the process, it's a lot of problem solving. The only red tape is that you put in front of you. You can do what you need to do and have the impact and find all the creative ways you need to work to get there. So I find that really exciting.
The next question is about opportunity cost. Usually it's because someone who left like a FANG salary or invested stock. I suspect in your case is a little bit different, so I'll still ask it. What was the opportunity cost for starting this startup?
Yeah, I'd say it's opportunity cost is something I definitely think about a lot. When I started Quantbase, I rejected an offer to go work at a big tech company.
Hmm.
And it's definitely something I keep in mind a lot, just being constantly paranoid about, is this the best way I can be spending my time? We talk about it a lot as a team. Like, we're a very capable team. We're very smart people here. We could be working on anything else, but we're working on this, and we want to make sure if we're working on this and spending our valuable time on this, it has to be impactful, it has to be valuable. We have to know it's working. So I think it's almost a superpower to think about your opportunity cost, because it keeps you honest with, is your company working, or do you just, could you be spending your time elsewhere? And if I was spending my time elsewhere, it'd just be another company. I would just found another company anyways. So
What type of people do you think are unfit to be founders?
yeah, I think anybody can be a founder, and be a great founder. I think there's people at, have a different mindset or a different stage in their entrepreneurial career, or however you might put it, who don't have those attributes yet. But I think anyone can get there. And the main thing is really just perseverance, the ability to think critically about your abilities and your company and the direction you're going in, if it's the right one or not. And then overall, just being very adaptable. And there's people who, might not have one of those, you know, at any point in time, but I think anybody can learn those skills for sure.
How do you learn perseverance?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely practice. And I think maybe even more important than perseverance is probably the ability to think critically about yourself and your direction, your company, because there's no point in persevering when it doesn't make sense to persevere. But keeping stock of whether you should be persevering or not, and having that ability to think very rationally about where you're at, I think helps a lot. Because if you're able to think about it and you say, like, going back to the opportunity cost, like, I could be doing something else. I could not persevere. I could focus on something else. But after assessing it, I can say confidently that this is the best thing I can be focused on. And so there's no reason not to persevere. I should be focused on this. Definitely helps a lot.
What's the most fun part of doing what you're doing, of building what you're building?
Yeah, the customer reactions are definitely the best. Like I mentioned, we meet with every customer just about weekly. And yeah, just hearing how game changing it's been to use Hadrius and all the time they're saving.
Yeah.
Uh, every feature we release, they're like, yeah, this is exactly, what I need. And that's been really awesome and really motivating, and helps with the perseverance again. If you're doing something valuable for people, that's a good sign you should persevere.
What do you look forward to the most in your startup journey? Usually, we kind of frame it from the lens of, besides selling secondaries and becoming rich, what do you look forward to most?
Yeah, I'd say the impact you can have, and I think, you know, measuring your company outcome is, in the long run, that's a pretty good measure of the impact you've had. If you build $1 billion company, like, obviously you've had a very significant impact, um, especially if that sustains. The other thing is just the skills. I think I've always just wanted to be the kind of person who can build something big like that, build something impactful, whether it's a company or an organization, or making impactful research when I was most focused on physics. So the only way to know you have that skill and to build that skill is to just do it, is to build a massive company, is to build a massive organization. So that's what I find most exciting about it.
Last question on this section, then we'll move on to the last one. It's a bit of a oddball question. What's the most mind-blowing startup horror story you've ever heard, experienced, or witnessed?
Yeah. So obviously I won't say names here, but a friend of mine, and this was just a few months ago, he was telling me about this, that he teamed up with the an executive at an established startup, and they broke out and went to start their own company. And at the end of it all, the company had a good exit. It was in over $100 million they sold it for. But he was talking about how the CEO that he had left this previous company to found this company with was crazy, just straight up crazy. And it turns out at the end, he was like diagnosed with some pretty serious health condition, mental condition. But in the interim, the CEO was constantly harassing him. He drugged my friend during a board meeting. Literally put like a roofie or something in his drink. Chased him out of the hotel that they were staying at after he was saying they stayed up for like 72 hours working on this proposal or something. And the CEO lost his mind, was on something. He threw a wine bottle at him and shattered on my friend's head. And he ran out of the hotel, chased out by the CEO, who was apparently naked, running through the hallways after him.
What?
Yeah, yeah. And then one of his other co-founders at this company got paralyzed from the waist down in a skiing accident. So yeah, it sounds like a nightmare. And
Your guy was the
yeah,
only normal one.
yeah, yeah, apparently so. I mean,
Gosh.
yeah.
How do you still work with him after he drugs you?
So I think after that, that's when he got lawyers involved, and um yeah, they found a way to break it off from there, and he kept a good chunk of his equity, but it was yeah, it was a mess.
I'm guessing no names will ever be named, but that's got to be the craziest one I've ever heard.
Yeah.